The Devil Made Me Do It documentary analysis. The type of documentary is a mixed documentary. This includes a combination of interviews, observations, narration, actuality, archived material to help advance the argument the creator is trying to put forward. Structure, open versus closed. Open narrative is when not all the questions are answered by the end of the documentary, and closed narrative is when everything is resolved. The Devil Made Me Do It is an open narrative because not all of the questions are answered at the end of the documentary. Single versus multi-stranded. Single narrative is when there's one topic throughout the whole documentary, and multi-stranded is when there's lots of stuff going on. The Devil Made Me Do It is a single narrative because all the themes throughout the documentary link together. Linear or non-linear. Linear narrative is when everything is in chronological order, and non-linear is when it's not chronological. The Devil Made Me Do It is a non-linear narrative because it's not all in chronological order and everything's scattered and jumps between different things. Themes in this documentary include the influence of the media, youth, music, crime, religion versus devil worship, which is good versus evil. The two binary oppositions generate conflict throughout the documentary. Camera work. There is handheld footage during the documentary which creates a freedom for filming, and for the audience it makes it more realistic. There's also establishing shots which set the scenes and gives context to the audience. There are a couple of extreme long shots and long shots. A crane of all the fans at the concert gives the audience a more realistic effect so they could feel more involved with the concert itself. Observational footage illustrates points and provides evidence for the exposition. There's also religious iconography where there's different religious symbols throughout the documentary. During the Manson interview, there is a low-angle shot which shows his power. The interview setup throughout the documentary is it follows the conventional interview setup. It follows the rule of thirds, close-up/medium close-up, and the speaking off camera makes it not direct address. Some of the interviews can challenge the conventions. The religious iconography during the documentary. Some of the work is zoomed in on and close and has a few close-ups. This shows the difference in the themes, which is religious versus the devil worship. This creates This creates a conflict throughout the documentary of the different types of people. Throughout the documentary, everyone that is being interviewed is all relevant to the topics. This is important because sometimes you can't have people that don't understand what they're talking about. It needs to be someone that is an expert in the particular field. In the background of Manson's interview, he is in a cloakroom/change room. This normalizes This normalizes Manson and makes him look like an everyday human. During Manson's interview, the lighting is very different. Half of his face is in darkness, which suggests that there is two sides to him, good and an evil side. This relates to the theme of the program, which is good versus evil and the conflict in the religions. Throughout this type of documentary, which is a mixed documentary, you will expect to see real people, locations and clothing, and in The Devil Made Me Do It, this follows that. I seem to think that males are the knowledgeable ones over women, and you don't really see very women narrators. The narration throughout the documentary is a voice of God narration, as we don't actually see the narrator in the scene. The narration throughout the documentary gives information and understanding of what is happening to the audience. It helps them to know the details of the scene that's happened. It helps them to understand the details of each scene and be able to follow on with it perfectly. The narrator highlights the key areas for the exposition of the documentary. Throughout this documentary, there is also a translator for the interviewees that cannot speak much English because it is based in Italy. The interviewees' voices are lowered during this time so that we can only hear the translator. This helps the audience understand more what is happening, and the Marilyn Manson music used during the documentary is both non-diegetic and diegetic, as it is used during his concert but also as background music. This contrasts to the music that is used when we are looking at the religious side of the documentary. This music is quite choir, hymn, classical and choral music. This is a contrast to the heavy metal music that Marilyn Manson plays. Manson's dialogue during the documentary really conflicts with the Marilyn Manson's dialogue during the documentary really relates to the title when he says, "I'm playing the role of the devil." This links to the title, and as it's the during this documentary, there is a montage which is at the beginning and introduces the exposition and it engages the audience. It is a montage of Marilyn Manson's There is a montage of Marilyn Manson's concert footage during the documentary as well. This highlights all of his success. Cutaways are used as part of the editing of this documentary. The cutaways are when things are edited down to visuals, and this is used in the editing of interviews. This provides visual evidence and makes it more interesting for the audience. Archive footage used during this documentary is music videos, which are mostly Marilyn Manson's work, police interviews, archive images, photos of the actual people. All of this stuff makes it much more realistic for the audience and makes them feel quite much more involved with everything. Throughout the documentary and at the end, there is a list of names which show the relevant interviewees so the audience can understand who they are and put a name to the face. There is a title at the beginning of the documentary which is stylized to be gothic, which really reflects the theme of the documentary, which is the devil. There are subtitles throughout the documentary whenever Marilyn's music comes on, so we can actually understand what is going on. At the end of the documentary, there is text to give a final finishing end details of the documentary. This includes telling us what has happened after the years have passed and the outcome of the things happened in the documentary.